Ever imagine your love life as, like, a family affair right from the start?
Yeah, definitely.
Well, that's what we're diving into today. Ghanaian dating customs.
It's really interesting how tradition and modern life kind of clash.
Exactly.
In Ghana, relationships are really interesting because taking things to the next level, it's not just about, dinner and a movie.
Right, right,
It's about family,
right.
like deep respect for family, and their blessing matters.
So it's serious from the get-go.
Oh, absolutely.
We're talking about knocking or kukuko. What does that even look like?
Okay, so picture this. Young guy, totally in love, wants to court his girlfriend.
Okay.
But, and this is a big but, before he even thinks about proposing, he's got to face the family.
Well, the whole family.
Oh, yeah. Parents, aunts, uncles, maybe even a grandparent or two,
Hmm.
all gathered round to, well, size him up.
Intense. I'd be
Ah.
so nervous. What happens during this knocking? What makes it so nerve-wracking?
It's all about tradition. See, the man formally asks for permission to court their daughter.
That's so formal.
It is, but it's not just like a formality, you know?
Yeah.
He has to prove himself, show he's worthy,
Worthy of their daughter and
and that he can provide for a family. It's a big deal.
love Andy responsibility
Yeah,
right from the start.
absolutely. And you know what else is a big part of it? Gifts.
Oh, yeah, I read about that. What's the significance?
Gift giving during knocking. Huge. It's symbolic, but we're not talking like just flowers.
No.
Traditionally, it was about showing you could provide food, household stuff, sometimes even livestock.
The goat.
It's a statement. I can take care of your daughter. That's the message.
Wow. It really shows how important family and tradition are in Ghana. But what about today? Things are changing, right?
Yeah.
More women are working, independent.
You're right. Things are changing. Ghana is a modern country. More women are educated, have careers. It's not just about finding a provider anymore. They want a partner.
So how does that change things, this whole dynamic of men being the providers?
It's fascinating, really. You have this push and pull. Traditional masculinity, strength, stoicism versus a more modern view of partnership.
Balancing act.
For sure. It's not even just about money anymore, though.
Really?
Yeah. Ghanaian men today, they're learning to navigate like the emotional side of things, too.
That's interesting because we talked about this earlier, this idea of stoicism.
Right, right.
What does that look like in practice? Like emotional expression or not expressing emotions?
Well, traditionally, men were expected to be strong, silent, don't show your feelings too much.
Interesting.
It was like a sign of maturity, being able to handle anything.
But that's tricky, right? Because, yeah, it can seem strong, but not talking about your feelings can cause problems in a relationship.
Oh, totally. Bottling stuff up leads to miscommunication, big time. And that's the thing in Ghana these days. Open communication, it's becoming so important.
Yeah, it seems like that's becoming more and more universal.
Right. Couples are realizing that, hey, to have a good relationship, you got to talk about stuff. Feelings, needs, fears.
So you've got these two things, this tradition of stoicism, but also the need for being open.
Exactly.
How do couples in Ghana deal with that, especially with different generations having different ideas?
It's a process. Unlearning old habits, challenging those ideas about, what's manly or womanly in a relationship. I talked to a young Ghanaian guy once. He was saying how growing up, he was taught never to cry in front of his partner.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like showing vulnerability meant you were weak. But then he realized holding it all in, that was creating distance in his relationship. Not good.
So he was almost having to learn a new way of being in a relationship.
Totally. And it sounds like he was figuring it out.
How so?
Well, he and his partner, they started small, just sharing more about their day, what they were thinking, their worries, building that trust slowly, showing each other it was okay to open up.
So it's like they were figuring out their own rules.
Yeah.
Still respecting their culture.
Yeah. But making it their own.
Exactly.
And this whole communication thing, it makes me think about the dowry tradition we talked about.
Oh, for sure.
Because that's also changing, right? With more women being financially independent.
Yeah, that's a big debate in Ghana right now. Some people are like, the dowry is outdated.
Hey.
Especially now that women are earning their own money. They see it as unfair to men.
Yeah, that makes sense. Especially if it's a financial burden on top of everything else.
Right. And it can create this weird imbalance in the relationship,
Resentment, even.
Exactly.
But you said there are two sides. What about the people who want to keep the dowry?
Tradition runs deep in Ghana. For a lot of people, the dowry, it's about more than just money. It's respect. For the bride's family,
Yeah.
recognizing the role they played in her life, honoring the past, but looking to the future too.
So it's complicated, right? Like, there's no easy answer when it comes to traditions like dowry. Yeah, for sure. It's about navigating those gray areas. You want to respect what the dowry represents, but things are changing and relationships are changing. It's a lot to think about.
It really shows how much relationships reflect what's going on in society as a whole, always evolving.
Right. And what's interesting to me is we're talking about Ghana, but this stuff, communication, gender roles, tradition versus modern life, that's everywhere.
Totally. It makes you think about your own relationships, right?
Right.
Like, what expectations are we carrying around?
Exactly. And maybe we don't even realize it.
That's a lot to unpack.
It is, but that's what we're here for, to get people thinking, maybe even start some interesting conversations.
Exactly. So, for our listeners, after this whole deep dive on Ghanaian dating, what's the one thing you really want them to remember?
That's a good question. I think it's this. Love and relationships, it's a balancing act. Everywhere. We're trying to honor where we come from, but also, figure out new ways of being together, loving each other.
I like that, finding that middle ground between who we are now and who we're becoming.
Yes. And sometimes that means having some tough conversations, challenging the way things have always been done, just like what we're seeing in Ghana.
It's a journey. Well, this has been fascinating. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Ghanaian dating customs.
My pleasure. It was great to be here.
And for our listeners, as you go about your day, think about this. What traditions have shaped your own ideas about love? And are you open to new possibilities, new ways of writing your own love story? That's all for today, folks. Thanks for listening.